Okay, this one here, it's a 2006, I think, Honda Odyssey. Check engine light's on. It's not running now, but it's on. Yeah, it's got the 3.5 V6, and I have a 2646 variable cylinder management system stuck off. And I killed the battery messing around. So to be perfectly honest with you, I haven't messed with one of these. I did a little bit of research here. I'll just try to sit on Mitchell if I can without shaking too bad. And it talks about the cylinder management. It's kind of threw me for a couple loops, so this might be a little bit scattered, but what it talks about is the Vtec, and that's the intelligent variable valve timing and lift electric control system. So variable timing electric control, maybe, I guess that's what the Vtec stands for. So it adopts a cylinder pause. The cylinder pause uses intake and exhaust valves on the rear bank under certain conditions such as cruise and fuel cut, and then it gives you a little chart. So what it's doing is it's shutting off the actual the valves. Since the valves in the rear bank are closed, the frictional losses from the valve, spring compression, and pumping are reduced because no air is being compressed, and that reduces engine drag. So they're using oil to control rocker arms that stop the valves from opening, and pretty much, you know, running on 3 cylinders. And then down here it says the vibration generated by 3-cylinder operation is counteracted by an active control engine mount system. And I've seen so many Hondas with the vacuum lines going to the engine mounts, and some of them have solenoids. Well, they do. They have solenoids that control them. I'm not going to get into that, but I never really knew that the Vtec was not really variable valve timing. It's just shutting cylinders off. So you also do have some that, you know, probably do both, you know what I mean, but this one specifically only does the shut off. So then it gives me a bunch of stuff about flow, and it gives you, this will be a little bit important I think for where I'm going to try to go with the diagnostics, but it's showing you the oil flow through the Vtec solenoid, which is, you know, the one that bolts on the side of the head. This one is on the back head, bank 1, I think. I don't know if that's bank 1 on the Hondas. It's shutting off the firewall side. So it shows the oil flow, you know, from the oil pump going through the solenoid and then through a spool valve. And that spool valve then directs where the oil is going, and then there's an oil pressure sensor. And then it's going, the oil flow's going in this way, I guess, and then coming back out back to the drain. So under this scenario, this is the 6-cylinder I said during 6-cylinder mode, and that's the intake valve, and it shows me a flow chart for the exhaust side. But when this thing is actually off, so it's just normal state, all the cylinders are going to be firing. And then when the computer actually grounds the solenoid, then it'll change. Let's go to we'll just go to the intake valve cylinder pause, they're calling it, intake valve side. So when that solenoid valve is energized, you can see the oil flow now is going through a spool valve in a different way, and it's going over to this channel, and it's going over here, and then the flow's backwards, but you can see the flow on the oil pressure switch is also backwards, going back all through the spool valve down the drain. So I'd like to pull one of these heads apart someday. I've adjusted tons of valves on these things, you know what I mean, with the little screw and the, you know, 10mm or whatever, and the straight screw, but I never knew why there was 2 rocker arms and there's a secondary and a primary, and you know, I never really pulled one of these heads apart to see, but it must be on like the rocker shafts or something where all this oil is moving around. So there's a lot of stuff happening, but the code I have is for it being, what was it, stuck off. So when this is off, go back to the 6-cylinder mode. When this is not energized, which I'm assuming is off, I know you guys mess with this, you can tell me if I'm wrong, because I could very well be. So when this is off, I see oil pressure on my scanner. There's an EOP PSI PID on there. So when I started up, I actually, and this thing has like 195,000 miles on it or something, but I'm showing like 80 pounds cold, and then when it warmed up, I'm about 30. Give it gas up to 60, 70 pounds. So it's saying I have oil pressure, you know what I mean? And when I'm driving normally, I'll see the oil pressure change through this one. And then whenever I get to like 4th gear, light load, the little eco sign lights up on the dash when it goes into overdrive. And then I saw this, you know, scanner PID change from off to on. And when it went to on, this thing started dropping and it went down to about 9 psi, and then the light came on, and then it quit trying to do it. So I'm thinking that's supposed to drop to 0, and the only reason I'm saying that is because when I go to, let's see if I can find that here, hold on. When I go to just in my data stream, you see the highlighted one, the EOP, engine oil pressure PSI. With the engine off, I'm showing 7.9 pounds, and it really, I would assume, be 0 because the engine's off. I have no oil pressure. Now I might lose this when I started. I don't know if it kicked that. Okay, so I started up. You know, it's a little bit warmed up now, but I'm showing, you know, 56 psi. So the oil pressure, you know, I have oil pressure, and I actually did physically energize this and make it misfire. So I know that it's shutting off those. I just energized the solenoid, and I watched that drop. But we can do that on the road too. I don't even have to do it. So my concern is, I might lose it when I turn it on. No, I didn't. Cool. So you can see the oil pressure drops, but it never goes to 0. And one of the reasons I actually started looking into that is because if I go to my functional tests and I can do a Vtec test, and then it gives me a little bit of stuff, you know, solenoid valve and motors, input voltage first, checks if the solenoid's off, and at this time it's normal for the sensor to show high pressure against commanded off, and next it commands the solenoid on, and then it's normal for the sensor to show low pressure with commanded on. Now what I think is missing from there is with the key on engine off, I should probably be reading 0, because if I hit continue here and then, you know, tell them what it is, and if the car's running, it'll tell me it shouldn't be running. Okay, it's a BTC, so let's get rid of that real quick. Yeah, get rid of that. Okay, lights out. Go to functional test. Vtec. Continue. Automatic. It doesn't let me run this test. It says, is the vehicle equipped with the Vtec oil pressure? And I'm like, well, yeah. So I hit yes, and then it says possible failure. The EOP sensor failure, the sensor ground line or signal line short. So it's just telling me it fails already. It won't let me go any further. I can't do the test. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering, you know what I mean? Like I said, this is kind of new to me, so, you know, that's where I'm at. You know, so when it's making me aborting the test before I can even run it, So I decided I'd try to drive it just so I can see, and we'll see if I can capture that. So I'll be right back. Alright, so hopefully I can catch this while I'm driving. I don't have anyone here to help me out. So I cleared the codes. It's hard to drive with a camera in your mirror, but it's Friday night and the industrial park's usually dead, so hopefully I don't have a plate on this. Hopefully I don't get pulled over. That would always be fun. So you can see right now that the check engine light's not on. Now you can see on the top here my oil pressure, you know, showing 69, 70 pounds. The Vtec solenoid's off. And I'm gonna try to scan down so you can see up in this corner. See that eco on D cell? Oh, I did it. Oh, damn, I missed it. Okay, well you saw the eco, so I don't have to show that again. But the Vtec solenoid actually went to on, and my pressure dropped. So right now I'm at 63. It's off. So when I let off and D cell, it went to eco, and it didn't do it. It must not be the right parameters. Okay, either way it'll do it whenever I get to 40 miles an hour and it goes into overdrive as well. And then the light came on me last time, so I'm probably in third gear right now. Okay, it went on and then off. Did it real fast. I don't know if you saw that. I was on my D cell. I think when I hit the brake it quit, so let's try that again. So I'm gonna let off and decel with no brake. Let's make it there on, but it's only dropping down to 9.2. It's not okay. And then now the check engine light came on, and I want to say that might be why it's saying stuck off, because when it's off I show pressure, and even though it's not 60, it's actually 9 psi. It's still not dropping to 0. So, of course, if I'm wrong here, then I probably won't post this video at all, because what I'm saying is not making any sense. But that's what I'm wondering, is whenever that thing... Okay, we're done. And the wipers are going off. So, at least that's on the inside. And I didn't drop it outside. Like, cracked my scanner. So, check engine light's on. It's not even going to try to do it again. You know, the stability assist's on. So, what I'm thinking is, I've seen some bulletins on the screens clogging, and a lot of people saying they're cleaning the screens, and I'm wondering if that's on the, I don't know if that's on the fill end or the return end, or both. But what I want to do first is, you know, there's always a chance I could have a bad oil pressure sensor and it just doesn't drop to 0. That would almost be where I would start, but they're expensive. I think they're like $70 or $80 if you can just get the oil pressure sensor. You know, and then, or just do the whole Vtec solenoid, but I know it works because I energized it and I made it misfire. So I'm wondering if there's a chance that that screen's clogged and it's not letting the oil return, and it's keeping slight pressure in that rocker shaft. So that's where I'm going to be at first. I'm going to pull that thing off. I'm going to check that screen, and if that doesn't do it, I might be looking for a pressure sending unit first. Because when I went to the flow chart, I don't even know if I can find it, but when I went to the flow chart, it started talking about a pressure switch and look for a PID on the scanner for on or off, and mine's not a switch, mine's a sending unit. So if I just went to my generic quick lookups and the DTC index and the Vtecs, the 2646, it starts telling me to put an oil pressure gauge on there, and then it tells me first thing is disconnect the rocker arm oil pressure switch, and mine, it's a 2-pin connector, and mine's a 3-pin pressure sensor, and then it says turn the ignition on, check the Vtec pressure switch in the data list switch with the Honda diagnostic system, and is on indicated. So, and then it even, I think it even shows a picture. It might not. Solenoid valve. No, it just shows checking some wires, but it doesn't show me a picture of the actual switch. Replace the switch, go to 25, no. So this one was kind of wrong, you know what I mean? That's why I got out of that, and then I went straight to engine performance, and then testing and diagnostic, and then went to the Vtec from there. So you also have variable cylinder management system, but when you click that, it starts talking about the Vtec. That's where I went into the variable cylinder management one, because if I go to the Vtec, it starts talking about 2646 oil pressure switch, circuit low voltage, and I don't have a switch. So I want to say this one is like for the 4 cylinders. I've seen the 4-cylinder ones with the VVT and the Vtec, but when I go to variable cylinder management, then it still talks about the Vtec solenoid valve, and then here's a picture of the filter right there. I'm going to take this thing off and see if this screen is clogged. So, like I said, this is a kind of a first for me, messing with that. But see, this one shows an EOP sensor, not a EOP switch. So you can get kind of sidetracked with the way Mitchell has things laid out, and I don't know enough about this to know if I'm seeing something wrong or reading something wrong, but I know what I have. I have a sending unit, pressure sending unit, and not a switch. So that's where we're at. So hopefully I didn't talk too much and put some of you to sleep. Mr. Black Eric, or whatever your name is, Eric and Denise, he says I put him to sleep. So if you're still awake, I'll be back in a minute. Your time, probably 10-20 minutes my time, because it's going to be hot. Alright, so I got it apart. I plugged it back in, but I took it off, and the screen does not look plugged, which I was hoping to see that. It'd be a nice fix. You know, and it bolts to the back of the cylinder head. Back there you can see where the gasket is in the ports. It all looks clean. Even the oil looks clean, but for 195,000 miles. But I know he changed it a couple times because of this code. But anyway, so I plugged it back in. You know, I took this off, and oil, you know, dripped out of it, and I was hoping that the screen, I'll pull it out and look, that was plugged and it was allowing pressure to stay in there. But even after the oil came out of it, I'm back over here, and the engine oil pressure is still showing 10.5 pounds. So, you know, with this thing having the kind of miles that are on it, maybe I really don't have 60 or 70 pounds of oil pressure. Maybe I have 30, and this thing is skewed. I think that's where I'm going to have to go now at this point, because it should be reading 0, you know, and I don't have any pressure. So I'm going to have him order one, but before I do that, I'll pull this apart, and I'm going to take the oil pressure switch or sending unit out of it. Alright, so here's the valve on the bench. Here's the flattened rubber gasket that should be replaced, and here's the screen. I don't know if it'll come through or not, but there's not enough of anything in there to cause a restriction. And then I'm assuming that, you know, that's the spool valve in there, so when the solenoid energizes and allows the oil to flow through one of these ports, it'll push that valve back and forth, right? So this thing probably moves. This thing moves according to which way the oil pressure is being pushed on it, and that determines which port that it's going through. So like I said, this solenoid here, the 2-wire, I just energized it by firing it to the battery and made the car misfire. So I know the spool valve works, but because it won't even run the test and I don't have a clogged screen, I'm almost wondering if this sending unit is skewed, or if there's a kind of a plug down in there maybe. I don't see anything wrong there either. So unfortunately, I think I gotta stop for tonight because I think I need this thing. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray this thing out and plug it back in and see what I read. Alright, so I have it plugged in. I probably set other codes for not having the solenoid plugged in. But even after spraying that thing out and smacking it off the table a couple times, I still showing 5 psi, which I don't think it's going to be happy with. It just shouldn't be. So here's a Denso number on it. I'm going to have my used car guy see if he can source me that, unless he wants to just get me the whole solenoid or the whole Vtec valve assembly because of 200,000 miles. But that's where I'm going right now, and then we'll see how good of a guesser I am. Alright, so I got a new pressure switch. It was not cheap. 150, I don't remember. Maybe even 170, I don't know. But that's the Honda part number for it. There is a Denso number that I couldn't cross. I found it in China for 30 bucks, but it took a month to get. So my used car guy got me just the Honda sensor. So real quick, here's the wiring diagram. The engine oil pressure sensor, and the blue yellow, I'm not going to go through all of them, but terminal number 2, which is the middle one, goes back to the signal. And then you have your yellow blue and your green yellow. The yellow blue goes everywhere in junctions over to here, and then the green yellow jumps over to an input shaft and then does a whole bunch of jumping over on some other pages. So I think the yellow blue is the signal, is the voltage, and then the green yellow is the sensor ground. But either way, it's the outer 2 terminals. So you can see I'm on the outer 2 terminals of the new one, and I'm showing like 10,100 ohms bouncing back and forth. And then if I switch them to the old one, I show, if I can get this to stick on there, it's hard to do with one hand. I should probably just edit this out. You see I have 10.67, so there's maybe 400 or 500 ohm difference. And then if I go in between the two, the one that I think is the power through the resistor, I'm showing, I'm touching my other lead here, I'm showing 2.56 kilo ohms. So if I go to the new sensor and then go to that one, I'm showing 2.45. So there's a 100 ohm difference between these, which could hopefully be my 5 to 11 pounds depending on what time I looked at it. So I'll throw it in and see what happens. Alright, so I'm outside, so I don't know, hopefully this shows up good, but you can see my engine oil pressure sensor. I have it unplugged. I did not put it in, so key on engine off, I'm showing 123.3. So that's always a good indication that you picked the right sensor. And then this one's pretty easy. There's an O-ring that's already back in there, and it just kind of threads in place. Since I already had it apart, it was easy to get to. So if I put that in, I'll tighten it real quick. Alright, so it's plugged in, tightened with my high quality tool, and now I'm reading 0.4 instead of, I think I was showing 5.5 at one point, and so I don't know, hopefully 0.4 is close enough to 0 for this thing to be happy. So let's see what happens. We'll start it. Maybe I don't have 70 pounds like I did before either. The battery's dead. Okay then. Never mind. Alright, well, it's still saying I have 80 pounds cold. I don't know if I still have any codes in here or not. No codes. No codes. It actually started the second time without jumping it, so either way there's no code. So then I could go to my functional test, hopefully go to my Vtec test. Tells me the same thing, normal to be off. That's with it running. With it off, you're seeing oil pressure, and with it on, you're seeing no oil pressure. So I think it's going to tell me to turn the car off though. So I got it running. Engine should not be running. So turn the ignition off. Turn the ignition on. It's the Vtec oil pressure, yes. And I can't run the test. What the heck? That's not available. That's not available. Well, for some reason I can't run the test. But after it ran for a while, I'm showing 1.3, so I'm not feeling ultra confident. But we'll go check this on the road if I can actually get a spot where you can see this. Alright, so hopefully that comes through. I had to put it down on the floor. I can't really see it. So I'm gonna look at the eco button and try to look at this at the same time without wrecking, but it was, I think it did it on decel, like a long decel with no brake. I got it. Okay, I'm at 30 miles an hour, 35, the eco came on, and it's not, there you go, switched and it dropped down to that 1.4, and it's still saying eco. Let off, hit the brake, it should go back to oil pressure. But my check engine light didn't come on. It's still on. Oh, the sun. Okay, you're gonna have to trust me for a second here. Alright, so I had to switch directions because of the sun. Okay, the eco light came on, little green light. The check engine light came on immediately before. Hit overdrive there, showing the 1.4 with it on. Going around the bend. I wasn't happy with the fact that it wasn't 0, and I wasn't happy with the fact that I couldn't run the test, but let off the gas. Eco light's on a D cell. It's showing 1.3. The valve is showing on. And my check engine light is not coming on. I really wish I could have ran a test with the scanner, but I don't know if, I honestly don't know why I can't. But it's working. Eco light's coming on. Like I did that 4 or 5 times now, and the check engine light is not coming on. So there you go. I'm gonna let the used car guy, I think he wants to put his wife in this car because it has rear entertainment for the kids. 195,000 miles. Why not, huh? There you go. One last time. Driving a car with no plate. The eco light's on. I'm drifting. It's showing. Sorry, I had to give it gas. Felt it hit 4th gear. Kind of cruising along. Eco light 1.0. So I'm bouncing between 1.3 and 1.0 and no lights. So sweet. I was a little bit nervous about that one. So I think we can call this one fixed. That's about all I have to say. So thanks for watching, guys.